Number 6. Hi, Amy.
Hi,
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
bien. ¿Y tú?
Estoy
Estoy
bien.
bien. ¿Y tú?
Yo también estoy bien. I am also well. Lesson A6 here is going to have some more vocab that's related to geography and directions and modes of transportation as well. Then we're still focused on becoming experts at conjugating verbs that end in AR. Remember that in Spanish, there's three types of verbs. There's verbs that end in AR, verbs that end in ER, and verbs that end in IR. And the ER, IR verbs are quite similar in their conjugation, and the AR verbs are kind of doing their own thing. But there's also a lot of similarities between all of them as well. We want to focus on teaching ourselves the rules of conjugation. And what is conjugation? It's a big word, right, for saying let's transform the verb from its perfect form. For instance, if we said to eat, that's comer. Go ahead and say comer, Amy.
Comer,
Uh-huh. Or an example of a verb that ends in AR is one that we've worked with already. Go ahead and say hablar, to speak.
hablar.
Right. So we're changing the ending of the verb from its perfect form to make it match the subject that we want to talk about and in the time frame that we want to talk about. And we're still here in the beginning days of our journey of learning how to transform these verbs. So we're just working with verbs that end in AR and we're focused on the time frame of the present. So let's dive in. The first part, though, is not related to the verbs. It's related to picking up some more vocab that's related to geography and also direction and
Mhm.
size as well. So let's start with the first one here, Amy. This is your favorite word. There's an accent missing on the guide on the E. And so let's try this word. I used to say it wrong all the time, but it's el océano.
El océano. No, el océano.
That one sounded decent, el océano. And for the
El
purposes of the
océano.
education
Océano.
and for you guys watching at home, let's say the Spanish word, the English word, and the Spanish word. And also a good place to note that if you're doing your own sort of educational system that you know will work for you, maybe words like these would be good for flashcards to be able to make for yourself to practice adding to your Spanish vocab. So one more time, Amy, el océano.
El océano. The
Yeah, that's
ocean.
good.
El océano. The ocean.
Yeah,
It's
sounds
a
good.
hard one.
Yeah. How about the next one? El mar.
El mar. The sea. El mar.
Yeah, and something to note is that oftentimes a Spanish speaker will not use the word ocean, the formal word from above, el océano. They might use the word el mar, even though it technically means the sea, to reference the ocean. So, for instance, on a globe or in a geography class in a Mexican college, of course, they'd say el océano Pacífico. But most times, the people will just say el mar Pacífico. Go ahead and try that, Amy. El mar Pacífico.
El mar Pacífico.
And then try el mar Atlántico.
El mar Atlántico.
Good. Yeah, the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean.
Mhm.
Notice that the gender of the word the sea, el mar, it doesn't give us those hints like we've talked about in previous lessons about the gender because it doesn't end in A or O. So we just have to know that the sea is masculine. That's why it's not Pacifica or Atlantica. It has to be el mar Pacifico or el mar Atlántico. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good. Let's try the next one. La montaña.
La montaña, the mountains. La montaña, the mountain.
Yeah, good. If you wanted it to be plural, how would it be?
Las montañas.
Yes, exactly. Las montañas. Everybody say it. Las montañas.
Las montañas.
Good. The next one we probably know because we know the Rio Grande, right? But let's try El Rio.
El río, the river. El río.
Yeah, good job curling your R's. Remember, we curl R's when there's two of them, R, R. but also if a word starts with R, you don't have to, but you'll often hear a Spanish speaker really curl their R's when a word starts with one single R. And a word never starts with two R's, right? So you're going to get that rio, el rio. Let's
El
try the next
río,
one, el lago.
el lago. The
Good.
lake, el lago.
Yeah, excellent. The next one is the desert, el desierto.
El desierto, the desert. El desierto.
Yeah, really good. You know how in English, desert and dessert are spelled very similarly. Let's just take a look in the chat here at the word for dessert, which is really different. It's postre. Let's try that.
Pos-
Postre.
Postre, dessert, postre.
If I said, do you want dessert? I'd say, do you want a dessert? I'd say, ¿quieres? ¿Tú quieres un postre? Go ahead and say, sí, yo quiero un postre.
Sí, yo quiero y postre.
Un
Postre,
postre.
un postre.
Try it again. Sí, yo quiero un postre.
Sí, yo quiero un postre.
Really nice. Yep. And just since we're focused on that, let's learn the word for cake as well. That's pastel. Go ahead and say pastel.
Pastel, cake, pastel.
Yeah. And a word that's good for pizza and cake is una rebanada. That's a slice. So let's try what's here in the chat. It's yo quiero una rebanada de pastel.
Yo quiero una rebanada a pastel.
Let's try again. De pastel. Yo
De
quiero una
pastel.
rebanada de pastel.
Yo quiero un rebanada de pastel.
I want to work with you here on this, Amy, because I would like for you to get it right. You're almost correct, but you said un rebanada, and rebanada is feminine. So it's yo quiero una
Una.
rebanada de pastel.
Yo quiero una rebanada de pastel.
Really nice. Yeah. Good. The next ones are focused on size. We know grande. Go ahead and say grande, big.
Grande, big, grande.
Good. So we've been saying the Rio Grande, but what is it really?
El Rio Grande.
Really nice. Yeah, the big river, right?
Mhm.
And then let's try the word for large, which is largo.
Largo, large, largo.
Yeah, good. Something to note is that when you're talking about sizes of clothing, we have large, but they don't use large. They say grande. So it's chico, mediano, y grande. Try that. Chico, mediano, y grande.
Chico, mediano y grande.
Yeah, good. Okay, perfect. So we've got the lake. Remember that in Spanish, adjectives tend to be after the noun. In English, we would say the large lake, but in Spanish, we would say the lake large. How would you say that, Amy? The large lake, but in Spanish.
Largo, el largo es lago. No,
That's the opposite of the way we were saying that it adjusts itself in Spanish. In Spanish, you're saying the lake large. How would you say that?
el lago es largo.
That would be saying the lake is large. And we just want the large lake, so we don't need the S. So we can say el lago largo.
El lago largo.
Really nice. Yeah, good. Now, the next one here, little, tiny, and small. Pequeño. Let's try pequeño.
Pequeño, little, pequeño.
Yeah, this is often a word that's describing a child, which could also, of course, be pequeña if it's a girl. And then we have another word that's not really written here. We only have chiquito, which is really small. Go ahead and say chiquito, tiny.
Chiquito, tiny, chiquito.
And just like we were talking about with the clothing sizes, the real word for small would be chico or chica, which is also often a word that's describing a young man or a young woman. Oye, chico. Hey, listen up, little man. Let's try it. Chico and chica.
Chico and chica. Oye,
Good.
chica.
Oye, chica. Uh-huh,
Oye,
good.
chica.
And then this is the type of thing that we would describe, for instance, if we were ordering a coffee, we wouldn't use pequeño, we would use chico. And oftentimes people are saying chiquito if they want a really small coffee. Let's try quiero un café chico, por favor.
Quiero un café chico, por favor.
I want a small coffee, please. Good, excellent. Good job, Amy. Now the next word here is distancia, and there probably should be an accent on the A on the guide because it's got a little pop there. Let's try distancia.
Distancia.
Good. And then the next word is car, carro.
Carro. Car. Carro.
Yeah. There's other words that people use for car here in the chat, like coche or auto. So those are two other words that are used for car. But for instance, going with the same logic of how our adjectives follow our nouns, instead of saying new car, we'd say car new, and that would be carro nuevo. Try that, Amy. Yo quiero un carro nuevo.
Yo quiero un carro nuevo.
Yeah, really nice. Good. For bus, there's two definitions that I gave. Really, the most technically correct is the second one, which is autobus. Try autobus.
Autobus.
Remember to be giving
Autobus.
that shoulder shrug pop when you see the accents too.
Autobus.
Yeah,
Bus.
good.
Autobus.
Autobus.
Autobus. Bus.
I love it. Yeah.
Camión.
Camión is another word that we would commonly hear from people, kind of like the same idea of the ocean with the mar and the océano. Camión really means truck, but people often say, estoy esperando el camión. I am waiting for the bus. And a camioneta, go ahead and say camioneta.
Camioneta.
Camioneta is like a small truck, and that's really the word that you would use to reference, for instance, a pickup truck. Camioneta, right?
Camioneta.
Yeah, good. And then there's also another word, semi-remolque. That's one of my favorite words in Spanish, and that's like a semi-truck. That's a tough one. It's in the chat. Let's try it. Semi-remolque.
Semi-remolque.
Yeah, good. Mexico doesn't really have a lot of passenger trains, but that's actually changing because the president, Claudia Sheinbaum, she wants to see more passenger trains in the country. Let's try that word for train. Tren.
Tren. Train. Tren.
Good. Sounds good. And then multiple trains, you actually add an ES. So it'd be trenes.
Trenes.
Good.
Trenes.
No, you said it right. Trenes.
I was just repeating it.
Oh, okay. I don't think you got it quite well on the second time, though. Let's try trenes.
Trenes.
Yeah, good. Then an airplane is avión. Let's try avión.
Avión.
Good. You can see the relationship with aviation, right? And this V theme comes into all language about flight. For instance, the verb for to fly is volar. Let's try.
Volar.
Yo quiero volar a México.
Yo quiero volar a México.
Yeah, I want to fly to Mexico. A flight is called a vuelo. Let's try that word. Vuelo.
Vuelo.
Yeah, good. And then there's a word for bird, which is ave. Let's try ave.
Ave. Bird. Ave.
Good. There's another common word for bird, which is pájaro, which sounds more like parrot. Let's try it.
Pájaro.
Yeah, good. Just try to give me, Amy, a little bit more of a break on my explanation before trying to repeat those things so that I can get my thoughts out before you demonstrate to our video watching audience how to pronounce these things. Sound good?
Okay.
You're doing a great job. Let's get back to something that we've covered in the previous lessons, which is what we were talking about earlier in assessing what we'll be doing today. And again, it's working with verbs that end in AR and transforming them from their perfect form in order to adapt to the subject that we want to talk about and the time frame. And right now we're working in the present. So in the present, the first rules are that if you see that the verb ends in AR and you want to change it from, let's say, for instance, a verb that we've worked with, hablar, that's to speak. You notice that it ends in AR, hablar.
Mhm.
But if I want to change it to I speak, then I take away the AR and I add an O and it becomes what, Amy?
Hablo.
Yo hablo. Very
Yo
good.
hablo.
Good, perfect. And we don't need to include the yo. We should because it's our second language. It adds more clarity. Spanish speakers do that all the time, even though it's a touch redundant. But the word hablo already shows us that we're speaking about ourselves, about yo. Yo hablo español. Try that, Amy. Yo hablo español.
Yo hablo español.
Good. So yo is I. We've covered this, but this is a review before we jump into conjugating more verbs. Tú is you. Él is he. Ella, she. Usted is this formal way to communicate about you. So usted is a built-in tool within the Spanish language that we don't really have in English, which is we change the nature of how we speak to demonstrate respect. We do that in English as well, but it's sort of more unwritten. For instance, you might say sir or ma'am. In Spanish, there's actually verb forms that adapt to formality. Then nosotros, who is nosotros, Amy?
It's we.
Or us as well, right? And then also in the last form here, we have ellos and ellas. Who's ellos and ellas?
They.
They or them. And then ustedes, that's not formal like usted was up above. Ustedes is a group of yous. That means you all. Go ahead and say ustedes, Amy.
Ustedes.
Good job. Let's look at this verb descansar, which is to rest. Go ahead and say descansar.
Descansar.
Yeah, good. So when we want to change it from to rest to I rest, again, this is rules that we're teaching our brain. The same thing that was true with hablar, to speak in previous lessons, caminar, to walk. We don't need to know the new word for each thing. I walk, you walk, he walks, right? We need to understand these rules in order to say if we see a new verb, we know exactly how to change the ending to make it match the subject. And this is for all verbs that end in AR. So let's try I rest. We take away the AR, we add an O, and we say yo descanso.
Yo descanso.
Perfect. Yes. And yo descanso is I rest. And sometimes people will say this to talk about what their day off is in a given week. So, for instance, if you are taking Sunday off, then you say yo descanso el domingo. Let's try that. It's in the chat. Yo descanso el domingo.
Yo descanso el domingo.
Good. Then the next one, take away the AR for the to form, and we get descansas. Let's try tú descansas.
Tú descansas.
Good. If the word for when is cuando, then if we just want to say, when do you rest, meaning what is your day off, how would we say that?
Cuando tú descansas.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a better order for that. For instance, there's three ways that you could say it, and your way is probably the least likely. The two other ones that are more likely would be tú cuando descansas or cuando descansas tú. Let's try that last one. Cuando descansas tú.
Cuando descansas tú.
Good. And also don't forget that there's another way which avoids the tú completely, and that's cuando descansas.
Cuando descansas.
Yeah, when do you rest? When is your day off? Good. Él o ella descansa, and here's the usted form. That's the formal way to say you. So tú is casual and usted is formal. So how would you ask an 80-year-old cab driver who's not your friend, but you want to show him respect, when is his day off? When does he rest?
Cuando descansa usted.
Really nice. ¿Cuándo descansa usted? Great job. Okay, there's two more forms. That's the we form. Nosotros descansamos. Amy, do you remember the word for Fridays in Spanish?
Viernes.
Let's say we rest Fridays.
Descansamos en viernes.
Really good, yeah. Or nosotros descansamos los viernes.
Nosotros descansamos los viernes.
That sounds really nice, yeah. The last form, remember, it can represent two different types of people groups, either they or them, or you all, but the verb form will always be the same. We take away the AR when verbs end in AR and add AN, and we get descansan. Let's ask, when do you all rest? ¿Cuándo descansan ustedes?
¿Cuándo descansan ustedes?
Yes, good. How do we teach our brain to follow these rules? We continue practicing with the verbs. So let's do that one more time. And this will be our last formal verb to focus on before we move beyond this part of the education. So cocinar is the verb for to cook. Go ahead, Amy. Cocinar.
Cocinar.
Excellent. And in this example, we have some full sentences. This first one here for yo cocino has the example of I cook eggs each day, which would be like saying I cook eggs every day. Let's try it. Yo cocino huevos cada día.
Yo cocino huevos cada día.
Yeah, good. And the word cada, of course, there then means each. Two, the two form, you. We want to ask here, the question below is cocinas bien? Let's try that. ¿Cocinas bien?
¿Cocinas bien?
You could also say, ¿tú cocinas bien? Try that. ¿Tú cocinas bien?
¿Tú cocinas bien?
Yeah, great. That's what in Spanish, in English, I mean.
Do you cook well?
Yeah, good. A good important question when getting to know a potential boyfriend or girlfriend. ¿Tú cocinas bien? Right. Uh-huh. And then the next form, the he or she or that formal you, we have the example of she cooks in the mornings. Let's try it. Ella cocina en las mañanas.
Ella cocina en las mañanas.
Uh-huh. Let's make that las a little firmer. Ella
La.
cocina en las mañanas.
Ella cocina en las mañanas.
Really nice, yes. Good. Okay, cool. Then we have the nosotros form. This one is we cook fish on Fridays. Notice again that we're taking away the AR ending in the nosotros form and adding amos. So the word is cocinamos. Let's try this sentence, Amy. Nosotros cocinamos pescado los viernes.
Nosotros cocinamos pescado los viernes.
Really nice, yeah. What does that mean in English?
We cook fish on Fridays.
Excellent, yes. Then there's the next form, the ellos, ellas, ustedes. They, a group of women, or you all. And this one, we're going to learn some vocab words. The question is, do you all cook potatoes on the stove or in the oven? So on the stove or in the oven. ¿Ustedes cocinan papas en la estufa o en el horno?
¿Ustedes cocinan papas en la estufa o en el horno?
Yeah, nice. Notice that en means both in and on. So we have two words for that in English, but in Spanish, en, you're using the context to know, am I saying in or on? And then, of course, we're picking up the vocab word la estufa for the stove. Try that, Amy, la estufa.
La estufa.
And then remember that H's are silent in Spanish, so this word for the oven is el horno.
El horno.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Muy bien. Very good.
Gracias.
Okay, cool. Now we have some more vocab that's around the house. Let's start with the first one. That's mi casa, my house.
Mi casa, my house. Mi casa.
Good. And we know the old saying what?
Mi casa es su casa.
Good. When we say mi casa es su casa, That su is interesting. We're trying to say my house is your house. That's the usted form. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we're choosing su and not tu, because we're still communicating respect. There's also a way to say that which is more casual, which is mi casa es tu casa. Let's try that. Mi casa es tu casa.
Mi casa es tu casa.
Excellent. Yes. The word for home is not the same as casa, just like it's not in English. The word for home is hogar. Let's try my home. Mi hogar.
Mi hogar. My
Yeah.
home. Mi hogar.
Excellent. Yes. Then the next one is the word for the door. Let's try it. La puerta.
La puerta. The door. La puerta.
Excellent. There's another word that's very similar to this, and it's the port. In fact, those who love Puerto Vallarta are talking about Vallarta Port. And we say El Puerto. Let's try El Puerto.
El puerto.
Good.
The
Yes.
port.
Excellent.
El puerto.
Nice. All right. Now the next one, the bathroom. El baño.
El baño. The bathroom. El baño.
Good. Yes. And also El baño could be the bath as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's try the next one for the kitchen. La cocina.
La cocina. The kitchen. La cocina.
Yeah. And sometimes this happens where the noun is the same word as a form of the verb. And we just saw this when we were working with the verb to cook, which was cocinar. You can already see the similarities between cocinar and la cocina. But
Mm-hmm.
then there was a word that came from cocinar, he or she cooks, which is cocina. We had the example of ella cocina en las mañanas. She cooks in the mornings. And so you have that verb cocina, he cooks or she cooks, but then you also have the noun cocina. So how do you know the difference? You're looking for clues in the dialogue and in the context to know, am I talking about he or she cooks or am I talking about the kitchen? Let me give you a fun example, which would be she cooks in the kitchen. Ella cocina en la cocina. Try that, Amy. She cooks in the kitchen.
Ella cocina en la cocina.
Really nice. Yes. Good. Okay. The next one, la cama. That's the bed. Let's try it. La cama.
La cama. The bed. La cama.
Excellent. The chair down below is la silla.
La silla. The chair. La silla.
Good. Notice that that double L, as we talked about back in lesson one, is more like a Y sound. La silla. It'd be like see ya later.
La silla.
Uh-huh. Cheer you later. See ya
Cheer
later.
you later.
Good. Okay. La mesa, the table. La mesa.
La mesa. The table. La mesa.
How would you say the new table?
La mesa nueva.
Excellent. Good adaptation on the gender adjustment where the adjective describing the table has to be the same gender as the word, the table. So, la mesa nueva. And the other word for new would be nuevo, but that wouldn't apply because that's more for masculine things.
Mhm.
Now, this is a word again, kind of like el océano, that I was pronouncing wrong for almost all my life. The couch. And actually, in the guide here, there's a missing accent on the last A, so it'd be el sofá. Let's try that, el sofá.
El sofá. The couch. El sofá.
Uh-huh. And a mad wife might say to her husband, vas a dormir en el sofá hoy en la noche. You're going to sleep on the couch tonight. Vas a dormir en el sofá hoy en la noche. No need to try that one. And also, that's a little bit more complicated Spanish from where we are now. But it is good to hear Spanish as well because we need to practice bringing in that and having it processed by our brain in order to round out our ability to speak, hear, write, read, all of those four things, right?
Mhm.
How about la luz? Let's try la luz.
La luz. The light. La luz.
Yeah, good. I'm going to teach a couple things in the chat here, like turn off the light. We use the verb apagar, and the way to say turn off the light is apaga la luz.
Apaga la luz. Turn off
Yeah,
the light. Apaga la
good.
luz.
Excellent. And then the next one for turn on the light comes from the verb prender, which is to start or to light. Let's try prender la luz. Actually, it's prende la luz is the command. Prende la luz.
Prende la luz. Turn on the light. Prende la luz.
Really nice. Yes. Good. Okay. We've already seen the kitchen and we also talked about the stove. Let's try a tough word here for refrigerator. It really helps us with our vowel pronunciation. El refrigerador. Sometimes the G's in Spanish are hard G's. Like if I said the vegan, I'd say el vegano, right? But here in this example, which also happens to G's, it sounds more like an H. Let's try it. El refrigerador.
El refrigerador.
I love it. Yes. And just like in English, we have a shortened word which would be fridge. That's the middle part of the word, refrigerator. They have a shortened word that they use, which is the first part of the word. And so you might hear someone say el refri. Let's try that. El refri.
El refri.
Good. Yes. And then the next one, the plate, el plato.
El plato. The plate. El plato.
How would you say the plate and the cat?
El plato y gato.
Good. La cuchara is the word for the spoon. Let's try la cuchara.
La cuchara. The spoon. La cuchara.
And this is how you'd say the cockroach is on the spoon. La cucaracha está en la cuchara. Just in case you ever have to need to know how to say that.
Okay.
Okay. And that'd be disgusting, so hopefully you never will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, notice that there are some similarities between the spoon and the knife. Let's try el cuchillo. El cuchillo.
El cuchillo. The knife. El cuchillo.
Great, excellent. And then the fork, el tenedor.
El tenedor. The fork. El tenedor.
Yeah. We have some words for glass and mug, and there's one that's missing here, which is the word for cup. Let's start with that one. It's C-O-P-A, so we say la copa.
La copa. The cup. La copa.
Yeah, and something interesting about la copa is that's how you might order wine in Spanish. We don't say I want a glass of wine, you say I want a cup of wine, right? Una copa de vino, por favor. Let's try, yo quiero una copa de vino, por favor.
Yo quiero una vino de copa, por favor.
Let's reverse the order on that and make it yo quiero una copa de vino, por favor.
Yo quiero una copa de vino, por favor.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. I want a cup of wine, please, which would be I want a glass of wine, please.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Excellent. Okay, great. And then we have also coming up very soon here the Copa Mundial. If the word mundo means world, then what do you think Copa Mundial would be?
The World Cup.
Yeah. Everybody try it. La Copa Mundial.
La Copa Mundial.
Great. Excellent. And then the word for glass is el vaso. Let's try el vaso.
El vaso. The glass. El vaso.
Yep. If we want to use that in a sentence to say, I want a glass of water, then we'd say, yo quiero un vaso de agua. And we could add a please. Yo quiero un vaso de agua, por favor. Try that. Yo quiero un vaso de agua, por favor.
Yo quiero un vaso de agua, por favor.
Yeah, excellent. Sounds really nice. And la taza would be the mug. Let's try la taza.
La taza. The mug. La taza.
Good. So that would be like a mug of coffee. Una taza de café. Try that. Una taza de café.
Una taza de café.
Yeah. I'm using a lot of the example of yo quiero because we tend to know yo quiero, I want, and that's helping us as we try and apply some of these words into a more full sentence, right? So of course you could say many other things, but we're focusing on that because we take the part about the verb usage, which we have familiarity with, yo quiero, and then adding these vocab words to practice with them in full sentences. Something else to note is that la taza is also the word for toilet bowl. Isn't that interesting? That's the
Mm-hmm.
mug, the
Mm-hmm.
mug in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. We also have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the food. Let's start with breakfast. The breakfast is really what it's saying here. El desayuno.
El desayuno, breakfast. El desayuno, the
Yes.
breakfast.
In Spanish, we have words to, they're verbs. Like we say to dine in English. And that actually more technically is related to dinner. You hear dine, dinner. But in Spanish, they have verbs for to breakfast. That would be desayunar. Let's try desayunar.
Desayunar.
If I wanted to ask someone to say, would you like to have breakfast with me? I'm more technically asking them, would you like to breakfast with me? And I'd say, ¿Quieres desayunar conmigo? And you don't have to repeat that one. You can try, of course, but ¿Quieres is do you want in the form of a question? ¿Quieres desayunar conmigo? And we say conmigo to say with me. Everybody say conmigo.
Conmigo.
hmm Try that
¿Quieres,
sentence, Amy. ¿Quieres desayunar conmigo?
¿Quieres desayunar conmigo?
Yes. Sí, yo quiero desayunar. And then the response is contigo, with you, contigo. Try that,
Contigo.
Amy. Yo quiero desayunar contigo.
Yo quiero desayunar contigo.
Muy bien. Okay, then el almuerzo is the lunch. Let's try el almuerzo.
El almuerzo, the lunch. El almuerzo.
Yeah, good. The verb for that is almorzar. But something interesting about lunch is that sometimes in the Spanish speaking world, they'll use the word that's food for lunch, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of confusing sometimes. In fact, I've seen a sign on a business before where in my mind, what I was imagining was they must have written it in Spanish the way they wanted it and sent it off to a translator to get it done in English. And it said breakfast, food, dinner, but they were trying to say obviously breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they
Mm-hmm.
use the word, we can skip to it, it's at the bottom, la comida, which could be the food, or the people sometimes use it to say lunch. Let's try it, Amy. La comida.
La comida, the food. La comida.
Good. And then this was the one we talked about with to dine, but dinner is la cena. Let's try it, la cena.
La cena, dinner. La cena.
Good. So the verb there is cenar, and that would be to dine, but it's really technically referring to dinner, right? So let's try,
Mhm.
yo quiero cenar contigo.
Yo quiero cenar contigo.
I want to dine with you. I want to eat dinner with you, is what that would be saying,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So, hey guys, we've gotten to a really important place in the lessons, and that place is where we start speaking and practicing in full sentences. And that's really everybody's goal. Sometimes we know one word responses or just little random phrases, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to learn how to speak in more cohesive and fluid sentences and form stories or statements or just anything with structure. So, this type of exercise we're going to see very commonly, and it's going to help us practice getting to that place. So, what we want to say in English is I am in my house, a fantastic home with a big kitchen where I cook breakfast every day with a mug of coffee in my hand. Nearly all of the things in this passage have been things that we covered either in today's lesson or in previous lessons. Sometimes things will come up that will continue to teach us new vocab or the use of a certain verb, a new verb that's not familiar to us. And that won't happen as much in this particular passage, but of course, our goal is to try and use the context of what we're looking at to try and deduce meanings. It's good if you know, and it's almost always going to happen this way in your early journey. 70, 80% of the things that are in the sentence, the percentage could even be lower than that, but you're using the other words that you do know to deduce what the meaning is of what's being said. Imagine that being spoken to you, you'd have to do the same thing as well as if you're reading it or trying to speak it out. You might be missing a word, right? And you say, oh, ¿cómo se dice to breakfast, to eat breakfast? That type of thing, right? So remember, we're not supposed to know all of this stuff right out the gate. Practicing with it, and Spanish is a lifelong journey to getting really not ever even to a perfect place with it, but just trying to get good enough where we can hear it and understand it well and speak it well enough to communicate. These are great exercises for that. So let's start by hearing it and reading along with. You're not saying anything, you're just practicing the listening side, but you do have the guide to help you along. Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día con una taza de café en mi mano. All right, Amy, let's try the first part. Estoy en mi casa.
Estoy en mi casa.
You could also say yo estoy en mi casa to give a little more clarity. I am in my house. Let's try that. Yo estoy en mi casa.
Yo estoy en mi casa.
Now the next part here is describing that house, a fantastic home. Let's try un hogar fantástico.
Un hogar fantástico.
Excellent. Let's try yo estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico.
Yo estoy en mi casa. Un hogar fantástico.
Yep. Now we're going to talk about what makes it a fantastic home with a big kitchen. Let's try con una cocina grande.
Con una cocina grande.
That sounds really nice. Let's try it from the beginning up until grande. Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande.
Yo estoy en mi casa. Un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande.
Yeah, with a big kitchen. And then we're saying where I cook breakfast each day, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día. Let me say that again. Donde yo cocino desayuno cada día. Try it, Amy.
Donde yo cocino desayuno cada día.
Good. Let's try from the beginning to that place. Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día.
Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día.
Yes, I cook breakfast each day with a mug of coffee in my hand, con una taza de café en mi mano.
Con una taza de café en mi mano.
Excellent. Yeah. So let's try it all the way through, Amy. I'm going to read it one more time. Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico, con una cocina grande, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día con una taza de café en mi mano. Go get it, Amy.
Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día con una taza de café en mi mano.
So nice and so perfect, right? And then you guys at home will have to gauge as I'm saying that, am I processing in real time what I'm actually saying along the way? How did you do with that, Amy?
Pretty good. I did
Good.
well with that. Yeah.
Excellent. And the pronunciation is great. And thank you for being a good example of how you can break things down line by line to build to the place where you can speak this complete passage. And you really did a wonderful job with that. To challenge yourself, Amy, maybe try to cover, and these exercises are for you at home watching these videos as well. Cover the English with a piece of paper or your hand. So you're only seeing the Spanish. Then, as you're looking at the Spanish, tell us what it means in English. Do you think you could do that, Amy?
Yeah, I can try it.
Let's go for it.
Okay. Estoy en mi casa. I'm in my house. Un hogar fantástico, a fantastic home, con una cocina grande, with a large kitchen, donde yo cocino desayuno, where I cook breakfast, cada día, every day, con una taza de café en mi mano, with a mug of coffee in my hand.
Really nice. Yes, excellent. That's a great example of how you could do that at home as well. There's one adjustment, right? Una cocina grande is not a large kitchen. It's a
A big kitchen.
good. And that is so slight that it wouldn't even make a difference if you were communicating that, right? And also,
Mhm.
if you did say large kitchen, the large would have to be feminine because kitchen is feminine. So let's try large kitchen. Una cocina larga.
Una cocina larga.
Yeah, really nice. There's one other way to complete this exercise where we're looking at a full passage, and that is to hear it without looking at it, because that's how Spanish will come into us in the real world. That is a frustrating journey sometimes because we might understand a very low percentage of Spanish that's being spoken at us, especially at speed from a native Spanish speaker. So we have to make a positive attitude choice and trust that every time our brain practices that exercise of hearing Spanish without any reference, that it's getting better at hearing the language. So you might only understand 20%, 15%, but take that positive attitude choice to know that this is necessary for us to be able to understand the language. Also, we have worked through this passage in a very thorough way, so we do have a reference. So it's not just something that's being said out of left field. So for this part of the exercise, you either want to close your eyes or completely look away from the screen and try and be as present and active in your listening as possible, but without looking at the guide. Let's try that, then we'll advance along. Estoy en mi casa, un hogar fantástico con una cocina grande, donde yo cocino desayuno cada día con una taza de café en mi mano.
Mhm.
How did you do, Amy?
Good. I
Good.
got it up.
Excellent.